Commander Juan Park floated in zero gravity inside her tiny quarters aboard the Defiant. The small metal box contained everything she owned now: a cot, a locker, and memories of Earth. She pushed herself to the ceiling and gripped a handhold, then pulled a worn photograph from her pocket. 5 smiling faces looked back at her. Her family. Gone now, like billions of others. The ship's computer chimed softly. "Commander, we have exited hyperspace." Juan tucked the photo away and pushed off toward the bridge. The Defiant was unlike any vessel humans had built before. Small, agile, and equipped with technology that even the hegemony didn't fully understand. It was meant to be Earth's prototype for a new defense fleet. Instead, it became humanity's last hope. She slid into the command chair and buckled herself in as gravity slowly returned. The view screen activated automatically, showing the emptiness of deep space. Stars glittered like distant diamonds against perfect blackness. "Status report," she ordered. "All systems functioning at optimal levels." The computer responded. "No hegemony vessels detected within sensor range." Juan nodded and pulled up the star charts. 3 months ago, the massive ships of the Galactic Hegemony had appeared in Earth's solar system without warning. Their weapons tore through Earth's defenses like paper. Colonies on Mars and Europa fell within hours. The orbital platforms that protected Earth lasted less than a day. She had been testing the Defiant's experimental engines when the attack began. Her orders were clear. If Earth fell, she was to escape and find a way to fight back. She had watched from a distance as the hegemony warships surrounded her homeworld. She had seen the flashes of light as cities burned. Then she had run. Computer, replay battle footage from Earth Defense Grid. Time index 3-72. The screen flickered, showing grainy footage of a hegemony battleship. Its shields glowed as Earth's weapons fired uselessly against them. But Juan wasn't looking at the shields this time. She was looking at what happened right before they failed. For weeks, she had hidden in an abandoned mining outpost, studying the battle data she'd managed to download before fleeing. Most of Earth's weapons had been useless against hegemony shields, but in a few rare instances, something unusual happened. When hit at exactly the right frequency and location, the shields briefly flickered. It wasn't much, a microsecond of vulnerability, but it was something. "Freeze image," she commanded. The screen stopped on a frame showing a tiny disruption in the shield pattern. "Computer, analyze shield harmonic at this point." Numbers scrolled across the screen as the computer worked. Juan had run this analysis hundreds of times, refining her understanding of the flaw. The hegemony shields operated on a quantum resonance principle that made them nearly impenetrable. But like all technology, they weren't perfect. The Defiant's main weapon was a prototype quantum cannon designed to disable enemy systems rather than destroy ships outright. Juan had spent weeks modifying it, adjusting it to target the specific frequency that disrupted hegemony shields. Her work was interrupted by a proximity alert. "Hegemony patrol ship detected at extreme sensor range," the computer announced. Juan's heart raced, but her hands remained steady. "Engage stealth systems." The lights dimmed as the Defiant went dark, its heat signature and energy emissions dropping to near undetectable levels. The patrol ship continued on its course, unaware of the human vessel hiding in the darkness. When it was gone, Juan exhaled slowly. Each encounter was a risk, but also an opportunity to gather more data. The patrol patterns revealed the location of hegemony supply lines and communication hubs. Intelligence she desperately needed. She pulled up the star map again, focusing on a small station marked in red. Hegemony Supply Station 7 was a refueling outpost on the edge of what used to be human space, not heavily defended, but connected to the hegemony's command network. If she could access that network, she could learn their next targets. Maybe even find out if any human colonies had survived. The plan was dangerous. One small ship against an empire that spanned hundreds of star systems, but the alternative was extinction. Juan opened her personal log and recorded what might be her final entry. "This is Commander Juan Park of Earth. If anyone finds this, know that humanity did not surrender. We fought, and we will continue to fight." She closed the log and turned to the navigation console. "Computer, calculate jump coordinates for Hegemony Supply Station 7. Jump coordinates calculated. Warning, this course takes us deep into Hegemony-controlled space. Acknowledged." Juwan's fingers hovered over the launch controls. Fear and doubt crept into her mind. What if her theory about the shield weakness was wrong? What if this was a suicide mission? She thought about Earth, about the billions dead, about the worlds burning. "Computer, plot course for Hegemony Supply Station 7. Juwan commanded, her voice steady despite her racing heart. It was time to strike back. The Defiant's engines hummed to life. Stars stretched into lines as the ship leaped into hyperspace, carrying the last hope of humanity toward the heart of enemy territory. The Defiant emerged from hyperspace at the outer edge of the Gorish system. Juwan watched tensely as the ship's computer adapted their transponder signal to match the identification codes they had captured from a Hegemony supply vessel. "Transponder active. We are broadcasting as cargo transport KL-792, registered to the Ixel Trading Company," the computer announced. Juwan nodded, pulling her stolen uniform tighter around her shoulders. The fabric itched against her skin, designed for the scaly hide of Hegemony officers rather than human flesh. But it would have to do. "Begin approach to Trading Station Gorish 3, she ordered. Standard commercial speed. The bustling trading post loomed ahead, a sprawling metal structure surrounded by docking arrays where hundreds of ships attached like parasites to a host. Gorish 3 sat at the intersection of three major Hegemony supply routes, making it the perfect place to gather intelligence. "Incoming transmission," the computer warned. Juwan straightened in her chair. Audio only. A harsh, clicking voice filled the bridge. "Cargo transport KL-792. State your business and cargo manifest." "Trading Station Gorish 3. This is KL-792. Juwan replied, using the translation program to convert her words into the proper Hegemony dialect. "Requesting docking clearance. Transporting industrial polymers from the Vega sector." There was a pause that felt eternal. Had they detected the forgery? Was her accent wrong? "Clearance granted. Proceed to docking bay 47. Juwan released her breath slowly. First hurdle cleared. The Defiant glided toward the station. Through the view screen, Juwan could see the massive Hegemony warships docked in the military section of the station. Their sleek, predatory shapes dwarfed the civilian vessels. One of those ships had probably been at Earth. She pushed the thought away. Focus on the mission. "Computer, maintain minimal crew presence aboard. Security protocols Alpha through Delta." Acknowledged. "The ship will appear to have a skeleton crew on sensors. Defense systems will remain on standby." Juwan changed into civilian clothes that would draw less attention. Plain brown pants and jacket in the style of independent traders. She tucked a small energy weapon into her boot and a data chip in her collar. The trading post's main concourse was a sensory assault. Hundreds of species from across the Hegemony pushed through the crowded space. The air felt thick with strange scents, spices, foods, and the natural odors of a dozen different species. Merchant stalls lined the walkways, selling everything from luxury goods to contraband. Juwan moved through the crowd confidently, as if she belonged. The trick was to look busy, to have a purpose. No one questioned someone who seemed to know where they were going. A holographic map showed her destination, the Twisted Helix, a bar frequented by military personnel. The kind of place where Hegemony officers might relax, might talk freely. The bar was dimly lit, filled with smoke from breathing apparatuses of various species. In a corner booth, 4 Hegemony officers in the distinctive black and silver of the command fleet drank from glowing containers. Juwan took a seat at the bar, close enough to hear them, but not so close as to draw attention. "Plex juice," she told the 4-armed bartender, ordering a common drink that wouldn't mark her as unusual. As she sipped the bitter liquid, She activated the translator in her ear. The officer's conversation filtered through, converted to Earth standard. Waste of resources, one was saying. Humans barely achieved interplanetary travel. Their technology was centuries behind ours. Orders are orders, another replied. The Council wants their system secured. It's already secured. We crushed their fleet. Not entirely. This voice was lower, more serious. Intelligence reports suggest at least one experimental vessel escaped. Juwan kept her face neutral, though her heart pounded. One ship. Who cares? What can one ship do against the might of the hegemony? The serious one leaned forward. That's what the Krell said before their central command was infiltrated. That's what the Boros Empire said before their shield generators mysteriously failed. You worry too much, Ikran. The humans aren't the Boros. They're primitive, fragile creatures. Perhaps. But Grand Admiral Tejo takes the threat seriously enough. Why else would the High Council summon him? Juwan's hand tightened around her glass. Tejo. The name was unfamiliar, but the title was not. Grand Admirals were the hegemony's supreme military commanders. Each controlled a battle group capable of subjugating entire star systems. The Grand Admiral has been summoned by the High Council. One officer boasted loudly, his voice carrying as he became more intoxicated. His battle group will finish what the initial invasion started. Lower your voice, you fool, hissed his companion. That information is classified. Who's going to hear? Everyone here serves the hegemony. Juwan listened intently as they continued, learning that Tejo had commanded the forces that conquered 17 civilizations. His battle group was legendary, undefeated. And now they were hunting for survivors, for the hidden human sanctuary. New Hope Colony, the secret settlement established beyond hegemony space, where 30,000 humans, the largest group of survivors, had fled. Somehow, the hegemony had learned of its existence. Juwan finished her drink, calmly paid the bartender, and slipped away from the bar. Her mind raced with the implications. If Tejo found New Hope, humanity would truly be finished. But now she had a target. Not a supply station or a communication hub, but the hegemony's mightiest fleet commander. If she could strike at Tejo himself, using the shield vulnerability she'd discovered, it wasn't just a mission of revenge anymore. It was a race to save what remained of her species. Alarms blared throughout the Defiant as Juwan gripped the control panel. The ship shuddered under her fingers, responding to her commands with near-perfect precision. She had spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment. 2 weeks of careful planning, leaving just enough evidence of her presence to be noticed. Small energy signatures here, brief appearances on long-range scanners there. A pattern of movement that any skilled military commander would recognize as deliberate. And now her trap was ready to spring. Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted hegemony space. Surrender immediately. The communication blared across the Defiance Bridge. Juwan smiled grimly. Her plan was working. The voice belonged to a minor patrol captain, but she knew who would be notified next. She had deliberately entered the restricted space surrounding one of the hegemony's most important shipyards. The response would be swift and overwhelming. Computer, open a channel, she ordered. Channel open. This is Commander Juwan Park of Earth. I will never surrender to the butchers who destroyed my world. She closed the channel immediately and pushed the Defiance engines to maximum thrust. The ship leaped forward, its revolutionary drive system leaving a distinctive energy signature that any hegemony sensor operator would detect. She wanted them to follow, needed them to follow. Within minutes, the sensors detected multiple ships converging on her position. Patrol vessels at first, then heavier cruisers. Juwan navigated through them with practiced skill, never letting them get close enough to use their weapons effectively, but never moving far enough away to lose them. The Defiance Bridge remained calm despite the growing danger. Juwan had disabled the automated warning systems, finding their constant alerts distracting. Instead, tactical data flowed silently across her screens, showing the positions of enemy vessels, as they assembled into an organized pursuit formation. 6 hours into the chase, the sensors detected a massive energy surge at the edge of the system. Juwan's heart raced as she magnified the image on her view screen. A flagship had arrived, enormous and bristling with weapons. Around it, dozens of capital ships emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming in the light of the system's star. Computer, identify the flagship. Analysis complete. Ship configuration matches the Hegemony command vessel Inevitable Victory. This vessel serves as the personal flagship of Grand Admiral Taiho. Juwan allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The bait had been taken. The most decorated fleet commander in the Hegemony had come personally to deal with the human annoyance. A new communication request flashed on her console. Juwan accepted it, and the screen filled with the image of a Hegemony officer. His scaled skin was deep blue, marked with the elaborate patterns that indicated high rank. 6 yellow eyes blinked in sequence as he regarded her. "I am Grand Admiral Taiho of the Galactic Hegemony," he stated, his voice translated into flat, emotionless Earth standard. "Interesting. You are the last commander of the Human Defense Forces." Juwan met his gaze steadily. "And you're the monster who's destroyed 17 civilizations." The alien's mouthparts shifted in what might have been amusement. 17 advanced civilizations with fleets hundreds of times larger than yours. What do you hope to accomplish, human? One small vessel against my battle group. Maybe I just wanted to meet the creature who gave the order to burn my homeworld. Taiho's eyes blinked in sequence again. Earth was not significant enough for my personal attention. That was a standard pacification operation. But now you have earned my interest. Your vessel's capabilities are unexpected. Behind him, Juwan could see officers moving purposefully around a command center. They were coordinating the fleet, surrounding her position, cutting off escape routes. "This is Grand Admiral Taiho of the Galactic Hegemony. Your resistance is futile. Surrender now." Juwan closed the channel without responding and immediately pushed the Defiant into a sharp turn, heading directly toward a dense asteroid field that bordered this sector of space. The view screen showed the Hegemony fleet responding. 300 vessels arranged in perfect formation, weapons primed and ready. They moved with practiced precision, breaking into groups to surround the asteroid field, preventing escape. But they were also keeping their distance from the asteroids themselves. The massive rocks tumbled through space in unpredictable patterns, dangerous to large capital ships that couldn't maneuver quickly enough to avoid collisions. The Defiant, however, was different. Its size and revolutionary propulsion system made it uniquely suited for this environment. Juwan guided her ship into the field, weaving between asteroids with split-second timing. Behind her, smaller Hegemony vessels attempted to follow while the larger ships maintained a perimeter. "They're launching fighter craft," the computer announced. Dozens of small attack ships poured from the Hegemony cruisers, designed specifically for pursuit in tight spaces. Juwan had expected this. She activated the Defiant's stealth systems, and the ship's energy signature dropped dramatically. The pursuing fighters slowed, their sensors struggling to track the suddenly faint target. Juwan used this confusion to dive deeper into the asteroid field, navigating by sight more than instruments. The Defiant's hull scraped against a tumbling rock, sending tremors through the ship. Hull integrity at 97%, the computer reported. For 3 hours, the game of hide-and-seek continued. Occasionally, Juwan would deactivate the stealth systems just long enough to be detected, drawing the Hegemony forces deeper into the asteroid field, spreading them thinner as they searched. Finally, when the fleet was sufficiently dispersed, she made her move. The Defiant burst from the asteroid field at maximum speed, heading directly toward a swirling blue nebula that marked the edge of the system. "They're pursuing all vessels," the computer reported. "Estimated time to weapons range, 3 minutes." Juwan nodded. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The nebula ahead contained ionized gases that would interfere with sensors and communications. Once inside, she could position the Defiant for its final surprise. The first energy blasts from the hegemony ships dissipated in space behind her as the Defiant plunged into the nebula's outer boundaries. The view screen filled with swirling blue and purple gases, occasionally lit by energy discharges as the nebula's natural electrical storms flared. They've surrounded the nebula, the computer reported. 317 vessels in blocking formation, no escape routes detected. Juwan guided her ship deeper into the nebula, finally stopping in a relatively calm pocket near its center. To anyone watching, it would appear she had fled as far as possible, only to find herself trapped with nowhere left to run. In reality, this was exactly where she needed to be. Silence settled over the Defiance bridge as Juwan took a deep breath. The nebula swirled around her ship, its gases creating a constantly shifting curtain of blue and purple light. Beyond that beautiful veil waited 300 hegemony warships. "Status report," she said quietly. "The hegemony fleet has established a complete blockade around the nebula." The computer responded. "They are maintaining position at the edge of the gas cloud, just beyond the interference zone." Juwan nodded. The nebula's ionized gases disrupted sensors and communications, creating a natural hiding place. But it was also a trap. The hegemony ships didn't need to enter the nebula to kill her. They only needed to wait. "Grand Admiral Tejo is broadcasting again," the computer announced. "Let's hear it." The alien's voice filled the bridge, distorted slightly by the nebula's interference. "Commander Park, your tactics have been interesting. Few opponents have evaded my forces for so long. But this chase is over. The nebula offers only temporary sanctuary. You have nowhere left to run." Juwan didn't respond. Instead, she pulled up the weapons control interface on her console. The Defiant's main weapon, the quantum resonance cannon, had never been tested in combat. It was a prototype, designed specifically to target the frequency vulnerability she had discovered in hegemony shields. "Begin power transfer to the main cannon," she ordered. Warning indicators immediately flashed across her screen. "Warning: the quantum resonance cannon requires 87% of total ship power. Life support will be reduced to emergency levels. Proceed." The lights dimmed as power drained from non-essential systems. The temperature on the bridge dropped noticeably as heating systems went offline. Juwan's breath began to fog in the increasingly cold air. On her tactical display, she could see the hegemony ships moving into attack formation. Their massive weapons would fire simultaneously, saturating the nebula with enough energy to destroy anything inside it. They were done waiting. "They're charging weapons," the computer confirmed. "Estimated time to firing: 60 seconds. Juwan's fingers flew across the controls, making final adjustments to the resonance cannon's frequency. Everything depended on this moment. If her calculations were wrong, if the shield vulnerability didn't exist as she believed, humanity would lose its last defender. Quantum resonance cannon at 67% charge. 50 seconds to complete. Outside the ship, the nebula gases began to glow brighter as energy from the charging hegemony weapons leaked into the cloud. Soon, this beautiful pocket of space would become a killing zone. 40 seconds to cannon charge completion. Hegemony firing sequence initiating. Juwan closed her eyes briefly. She thought of Earth, of the billions who had died, of her family. Would they be proud of what she was about to do? Vengeance wasn't what they would have wanted, but survival, the chance for humanity to continue. That was worth fighting for. 30 seconds. On her screen, she could see Grand Admiral Tejo's flagship positioned at the center of the formation. The massive vessel coordinated the entire fleet's actions, if she could target it first. 20 seconds. The nebula was glowing white-hot now, as the hegemony weapons reached full power. The Defiant's hull temperature began to rise despite the cold inside the ship. 10 seconds. Juwan positioned her targeting reticle directly on Tahoe's flagship. The quantum resonance cannon would fire a beam of concentrated energy, calibrated to the exact frequency that disrupted hegemony shields. In theory, It would cause a catastrophic shield failure, exposing the ship's power core to feedback. Quantum resonance cannon charge, the computer announced. Warning, power levels exceeding safety parameters. A new communication request flashed on her screen. Taiho making one final demand for surrender. Juan accepted it. The Grand Admiral's 6 eyes stared at her from the screen. Commander Park, this is your final opportunity. Surrender your vessel. Grand Admiral Taiho, Juan broadcast. You asked who I am. I am what remains of Earth. And this is our answer. She pressed the firing control. The Defiant shuddered as the quantum resonance cannon discharged. A beam of blindingly bright energy cut through the nebula gases, momentarily creating a tunnel of clear space through the cloud. It struck the flagship's forward shields with pinpoint accuracy. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the shields flared with unnatural brightness before collapsing completely. The beam continued through, striking the ship's hull directly. The flagship's power core, suddenly exposed to the resonance frequency, went critical. A blinding flash erupted as the massive vessel exploded. But that was just the beginning. The explosion sent a wave of the same resonance frequency outward, striking the shields of nearby ships. Those shields failed in the same way, leading to more explosions. A chain reaction spread through the tightly packed formation. On her view screen, Juan watched in stunned silence as ship after ship exploded. The careful formation that had been meant to trap her became their downfall, as the destruction spread from one vessel to the next. In the command center of his secondary command ship, Grand Admiral Taiho watched in disbelief as his fleet, the mightiest armada ever assembled, disintegrated around him. The shield systems that had protected the hegemony for centuries were failing catastrophically against a weapon they had never encountered before. All vessels, emergency dispersal, he ordered, but it was too late. The chain reaction moved faster than his ships could respond. Aboard the Defiant, warning alarms blared as the shockwaves from the exploding fleet reached the nebula. Structural integrity compromised, the computer announced. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Emergency bulkheads engage. Juan held tight to her console as the ship rocked violently. The nebula, once a trap, now provided some protection from the devastation outside, absorbing and dispersing some of the energy. Through gaps in the swirling gases, she glimpsed the aftermath of her attack. Where once 300 warships had waited in perfect formation, now only debris remained. Fragments of hull plating, twisted metal, and the occasional intact section of a ship tumbled through space. Of Taiho's secondary command ship, there was no sign. The chain reaction had been complete. Damage report, Juan managed, her voice hoarse. Multiple systems damaged. Propulsion at 42% capacity. Life support stable. Weapons offline. She nodded slowly, still processing what had just happened. The plan had worked better than she could have hoped. The shield vulnerability was real, and the quantum resonance cannon had exploited it perfectly. In less than 2 minutes, she had destroyed the hegemony's most powerful fleet. The light of a distant star glinted off metal fragments as the Defiant drifted silently through the debris field. What had once been the pride of the hegemony, 300 warships under the command of their greatest admiral, was now nothing but twisted metal and broken hulls scattered across space. Juan sat motionless in her command chair. Her uniform was stained with blood from a cut on her forehead. The bridge lights flickered as damaged systems struggled to maintain power, but she was alive. The Defiant was damaged, but flying. "Computer, what's our status?" she asked, her voice rough from breathing the smoke-filled air of the damaged bridge. "Repairs in progress. Life support stable. Communication systems functional. Propulsion at 38% capacity." Juan nodded, then pulled up the ship's communication interface. Her fingers hovered over the controls for a moment. What she was about to do would change everything. There would be no going back. She took a deep breath and began recording. "This is Commander Juan Park of Earth. To any humans who survive, and to all species suffering under hegemony rule. We are not defeated. I have discovered a critical weakness in hegemony shield technology. She paused, looking at the debris field visible through her view screen. The evidence surrounds my ship. This was the fleet of Grand Admiral Tao. 300 ships, destroyed by a single human vessel. I am transmitting the technical specifications of the shield vulnerability now. Use this knowledge. Fight back. Jiwan attached the detailed analysis of the shield frequency flaw, along with the modifications she had made to the Defiant's weapons to exploit it. The information would allow even smaller ships to defeat hegemony vessels if they could adjust their weapons properly. Computer, broadcast this message on all frequencies. Maximum power. Warning. Broadcasting at maximum power will reveal our position to any remaining hegemony forces in this sector. Do it anyway. The Defiant's communication array came to life, sending Jiwan's message and the technical data across space. The broadcast would reach nearby systems immediately and spread outward at light speed. For 3 days, the Defiant drifted at the edge of the debris field while critical repairs were completed. Jiwan worked tirelessly alongside the automated repair systems, sleeping only when exhaustion forced her to rest. As she worked, the ship's sensors detected unusual activity in nearby systems. Ships were moving. Fleets were changing course. Something was happening. On the 4th day, the Defiant's long-range sensors picked up news broadcasts from a dozen worlds. Jiwan watched in amazement as reports flooded in from across hegemony space. Rebellions had erupted on at least 17 planets. Subject species, armed with knowledge of the critical shield weakness, had risen up against their oppressors. In the Vega system, the hegemony's main shipyard had been captured by its slave workforce. In the Centauri sector, 3 planetary governors had been overthrown. The hegemony military, suddenly vulnerable, was stretched too thin to respond effectively. It's really happening. Jiwan whispered to herself as she watched footage of hegemony warships exploding above a rebel world. The other species were using her information, adapting it to their own weapons. 4 weeks after the destruction of Tahoe's fleet, Jiwan set course for New Hope Colony. The journey would be long, even with the Defiant's advanced engines. The colony had been established beyond known hegemony space, hidden on a small moon orbiting a gas giant in an unremarkable star system. The trip took 5 months. Jiwan spent the time monitoring broadcasts from across the galaxy. The rebellion spread like wildfire, planet after planet throwing off hegemony control. There were defeats as well as victories. The hegemony still controlled vast resources and many loyal worlds. But the tide had turned. When the Defiant finally approached New Hope Colony, 6 ships moved to intercept it. Human vessels, part of the colony's small defense force. Unidentified ship, this is New Hope Security. State your identity and purpose. Jiwan smiled at the sound of a human voice. This is Commander Jiwan Park aboard the Earth vessel Defiant. I'm coming home. There was a moment of stunned silence before the response came. Commander Park, we received your broadcast, but we didn't know if you had survived. I survived, and I have a lot to tell you. The small moon that housed New Hope Colony grew larger in her view screen. It wasn't much to look at. A rocky world with a thin atmosphere, its surface dotted with domed structures and underground facilities. But it held 30,000 humans, the largest remaining population of her species. As the Defiant settled onto the landing pad, Jiwan saw hundreds of people gathered beyond the airlock. They stood in silence, watching as the ship that had changed the course of the war touched down on their world. The airlock cycled open. Jiwan hesitated at the threshold. For almost a year, the Defiant had been her entire world. Now she was about to step onto solid ground, to see the sky above her head, to breathe unfiltered air. She stepped forward. The gravity felt strange after so long in space. The air was cooler than the Defiant's recycled atmosphere. A man in a colonial administrator's uniform approached her. Commander Park, I'm Administrator Doyan. On behalf of everyone here, of all humanity, I want to thank you. Before she could respond, the crowd erupted in cheers. People pushed forward, reaching out to touch her, to shake her hand. Juwon stood frozen, overwhelmed by the noise and movement after months of solitude. A young girl pushed through the crowd and handed her a small flower, one of the precious plants grown in the colony's hydroponics bay. "You saved us," the girl said simply. 3 days later, Juwon stood in New Hope's communications center as a historical message arrived. Representatives from 27 formerly subjugated species were calling for a meeting to establish a new galactic council, one based on equality rather than domination. Humanity, despite its small numbers, had been invited to send a representative. The galactic hegemony was collapsing. In its place, something new was forming. That night, Juwon walked alone to the edge of the colony's main dome. Through the transparent ceiling, she could see the stars scattered across the black sky. The same stars she had navigated through, fought under, nearly died among. For the first time since Earth fell, they didn't seem cold or hostile. They looked like possibilities, like futures, like hope. She closed her eyes and remembered Earth, the blue oceans, the green forests, the crowded cities. Gone forever, but humanity survived. And now, because of what she had done, humanity would have a voice in whatever came next. It was enough.